Our next speaker is David Christensen, Managing Director of Renascor Resources.
Thanks very much, Liam. Renascor Resources is an Adelaide-based exploration and development company now operating in the clean energy space after the discovery of what's grown into one of the world's largest graphite deposits. Our Sevier project in South Australia is currently the second largest proven reserve of graphite in the world and the largest reserve of graphite outside of Africa. Our strategy at Renascor is to produce not just a graphite at the mine site, but we want to go one step further and produce a refined, purified spherical form of graphite that allow us to sell directly into the high growth area, the lithium-ion battery sector. And we believe we can do this with some key competitive advantages that really come down to two factors. The project itself, both its scale and its quality, and secondly, the fact that we have this deposit that is by any measure globally competitive, and it's located here in Australia, a modern industrial jurisdiction, the kind of jurisdiction where you can upgrade the graphite from the mine into a refined product and sell directly to the lithium-ion battery sector. We believe we're going to be able to do that with some key competitive advantages also on price. And this gives us an opportunity at Renascor to grow this project into what could become one of, if not the largest producers of a graphite project for the lithium-ion battery sector. A quick corporate profile. Renascor trades under the ticker symbol RNU. Our cash position is relatively strong, over 15 million at the end of the December quarter. You can see our share price performance and volume over the last 12 months where things have really picked up relatively recently, where graphite has come into focus largely for a theme I think you're going to hear a lot about over the next 2 days. There's simply not enough of the raw material to meet the anticipated demand. We've certainly been a beneficiary because in the graphite space, there's a real problem. We're going to need new supply. We're going to need lots of it, not just from us, from others as well. We also got a major boost forward a few weeks ago when we were one of the first participants under the $2 billion critical minerals facility that the minister talked about early, and we were awarded a conditional grant for $185 million, which will cover the vast majority of our startup expenses. In terms of our project then and where graphite fits, we try to illustrate with this cartoon here where we're going to have a traditional mining operation. It'll consist of an open cut mine and a flotation processing plant. But then we'll have a secondary operation where we will upgrade that material into a purified spherical graphite form. And then that material gets sold to lithium-ion battery anode manufacturers who in turn coat it, and then it winds up going to cell makers who produce battery cells, and then it winds up in Tesla and other electric vehicles. So the primary product we're producing is purified spherical graphite, and our customer base is a lithium-ion battery anode manufacturer. Now, in terms of the market, and I think you're going to see a lot of slides like this over the next couple of days, because this paradigm-shifting event is impacting battery minerals. More lithium-ion batteries are going to be needed for the electric vehicles, and we have a real problem. The real problem is raw materials are needed to supply that. If we look on the graphite side, anodes, you can see the curve here on the right. The curve for anode is quite similar to the curve for lithium-ion batteries. We're going to need a heck of a lot more anodes, and the key raw material that goes into the lithium-ion battery anode is graphite. There's no substitute for graphite. There's a natural flake form of graphite. There's a synthetic form of graphite. What we're producing is the natural flake form of graphite. And much like you can't have a cathode without lithium, you can't have an anode without graphite. Now, the particular product we're looking to produce is the refined form, purified spherical graphite. And you can see the curve here. Again, big increases, compounded annual growth rates of near 30%. At this rate, you would need over 90 projects of our size by the end of the decade to meet the expected demand. Now, a quick note on graphite. Graphite hasn't yet become a battery mineral when you consider what's produced at the mine site. So currently, graphite concentrates, the kind you would be produced at an open cut mine and a flotation plant, only account for less than a quarter of all graphite that goes into the lithium-ion battery sector. It's still primarily an industrial mineral. For us, the graphite concentrates are really the feedstock that feeds into the downstream operation to produce purified spherical graphite. And there you see 100% exposure to the lithium-ion battery space. This is where the growth is in graphite. And this is obviously why we want to participate there. It's not just about getting higher margins, it's participating in the high growth space. The customer base for anodes is Northeast Asia. And primarily China. China really dominates this market. They control about 85% of all anode production and account for over 90% of new capacity under construction. The other two markets are South Korea and Japan. And really, that's it for now. I think there's anticipated growth in Europe and US. I saw a report out earlier this morning from Benchmark Minerals that said by 2030, they think that US and Europe will account for about 4% of anode production. So for now, the production is centered primarily on Northeast Asia, and that's where we're looking for our customer base. And that customer base is 100% dependent on China for their supply. So China controls 100% of the midstream capacity to produce purified spherical graphite. And China has its own problem in that its anode and lithium-ion battery capacity are expanding faster than its ability to supply. So this is a problem for Chinese anode manufacturers who are now coming to us looking for offtake. And it's also a problem for Koreans and Japanese. There's simply not enough. Where is it going to come from? Well, we think we can be the low-cost provider outside of China. Graphite prices are only starting to see upward appreciation. So purified spherical graphite is what we're looking to produce. Over the last 6 months, we've seen a 40% increase, but we're not seeing any new supply come online. And unless that happens, this curve we're seeing right here can only go in one direction. In terms of our project, really the economics of our project all come down to the deposit itself. So Sivir is large. It's one of the largest deposits, but it also has a very favorable orientation, which we try to show in the cross-section here. So that's Sivir, you can see in red, and we superimposed 3 other graphite deposits in the 2 shades of blue and green to give you an idea of how graphite generally is formed. It's generally vertical or subvertical and consists of a series of lenses. So Sivir is not only big, it's relatively flat-lying and near surface. That translates into a particularly low mining cost. So this is our cost advantage. We have a big mine, but it's relatively flat. It keeps our mining costs low. We completed a definitive feasibility study in 2019, and it put Sivir's cost amongst the lowest of any graphite deposit in the world. Probably hard to see, but the other jurisdictions that are included here are China, Mozambique, Madagascar. The advantage we have is we're in Australia. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to take the material and upgrade it into a high-value form here. The mine site is located just outside of Arno Bay on the coast of the Eyre Peninsula in South Australia. Our plan is to take that to the container-carrying port of Port Adelaide and upgrade it to a purified spherical graphite form along the way. So we're not looking to take material, for instance, from Africa, ship it across the ocean to another jurisdiction and upgrade it, and then ship it again to customer. We want to get the material from the mine site, upgrade it, get it to port, and then get it to its customer. At the midpoint of 2020, we completed a battery anode material study that combined both the upstream mining operation and the midstream purified spherical graphite operation. And we estimate our costs are about $2,000 US a ton. We think that puts us competitive with some of the mid-tier producers in China. But more importantly, we think we have an advantage of anyone outside of China. And the advantage, again, comes down to the deposit itself. The largest single component cost in the production of the refined graphite product is the feedstock that goes into it. If we are successful at producing a low-cost feedstock, we think it's going to be around $350 a ton. That's going to give us an advantage in the production of purified spherical graphite. And what we're trying to show in this bar graph here is how much it would cost us if we had to purchase the graphite concentrate at market price. So just based on today's prices, it would cost us over $600 a ton extra if we bought material on the market and then tried to upgrade it ourselves. If we look at the projected cost of graphite concentrates over the 40-year life of our mine, it changes to over $1,000 a ton. So quite simply, we think we can be amongst the lowest cost producers of purified spherical graphite outside of China. When we completed that battery anode material study in 2020, we were looking at producing around 28,000 tons of purified spherical graphite. Now, at the time, we had no offtake agreements in place, but obviously had discussions with anode manufacturers. And 28,000 tons probably looked like a bit of a stretch goal. That gave us a net present value of just under $500 million US on a 40-year mine life. But what's happened since then is the market has really raced ahead, and the potential offtake is growing faster than the supply globally. So in our case, we now have 4 non-binding offtake agreements that cover up to 60,000 tons, which is twice our first stage capacity, and we're seeing more demand. So we see real opportunity to improve upon what we think are already really great numbers, but the overall value of the project should improve simply by producing more material, and the demand is certainly there. Environmental, social, and governance credentials are becoming increasingly important, especially in the battery mineral space. We think we rate very favorably here on a relative basis, and part of it is simply our location. Graphite is generally produced in China, it's produced in Africa. We're looking to produce our graphite obviously here in Australia and South Australia. The same would be true of any Australian jurisdiction, in that the environmental regulations are among the strictest in the world. We've also adopted a purification method that doesn't use hydrofluoric acid, which is what the Chinese do. So it's a much more benign, environmentally friendly way to produce purified spherical graphite. And then we're really optimizing the use of local resources. We take the material from the mine, we upgrade it, we get it to customer. We don't cart it across the ocean to upgrade it. So simply by going through a very simple supply chain, we think that's going to significantly lower the carbon footprint of this project. Our offtake strategy is really simple. We want to supply the leading anode manufacturers in the world. We now have 4 non-binding offtake agreements that we're looking to convert to binding. One of them is with the largest anode maker outside of China, POSCO. That's for up to 30,000 tons of product, and that alone would cover our first stage capacity. We have 3 additional offtake agreements, each for 10,000 tons. 2 of them are with Chinese anode companies, Mingguang New Material and Zito, and a third is with Hanwha, a Japanese trading company, who are one of the more active groups in Japan in battery mineral space. So all told, we're looking at potentially 60,000 tons of material right now. And again, that's a first stage production from our earlier study of 28,000 tons. So there's ample opportunity to expand that. The $185 million conditional loan approval under the Critical Minerals Facility was particularly important. One of the great difficulties you have with critical minerals project is the uncertainty behind offtake and some of the qualification times. So the fact that we have $185 million available makes a real difference, because it can significantly de-risk our project. Our startup capital, to give you an idea, is $205 million from that 2020 study. So a large portion of that will be taken care of via the conditional loan from the Australian government. Our strategy is really threefold. Right now, we want to commence operations. We want to do that as quickly as we can. We want to start up a stage 1 production and demonstrate what looks like a very good advantage on paper can be one in reality. We see significant expansion ability, obviously because of the demand, where we can expand in terms of volume, and that'll increase revenue, it'll increase returns to our shareholders. And then there's probably a third stage we can get into when we look at not just producing a midstream product, purified spherical graphite, but we have every expectation that the future should allow us to coat that and then become suppliers to battery companies that may be in partnership with some of the anode companies we're looking to supply right now, or with other groups. The future for us right now, though, is really firmly on stage 1. We want to get into production. We want to do that as quickly as possible. How do we do that? Well, this year we'll be looking to progressively meet the terms of the $185 million loan from the federal government. We'll be looking to convert those non-binding agreements into binding to support that loan. We'll also be looking to redo our study from 2020 and consider staged expansions and additional expansion into stage 1. And then finally, we'll be looking to get our final regulatory approvals, and that we hope will lead us to a final investment decision towards the end of this year. And then we'll move forward and what we hope will move into that stage 1 production. So thanks very much for your time. I know we have some time for questions after this, but we have a booth as well, and I'll be here for both days, and look forward to talking to a lot of you. Thanks very much.